UK who is listening to the Inspire Summit, also those in Europe and in Australia and the USA. This is the Inspire Summit, which starts today and is running throughout the month of August. So you are all very, very welcome. I'm Marie Fraser, a boundary management specialist who helps corporate women climb the career ladder without sacrifice using my Marie Fraser framework. And we're kicking off the summit today in conversation with Peter Abrahamsen, a psychologist also known as the emotional weightlifter. Peter, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, Marie. Thank you very much for talking to me today. And yes, I am Peter Abrahamsen, and I do call myself the emotional weightlifter. I'm a psychologist and a coach. I wasn't always. I started my career way back some 40 years ago, doing various jobs whilst I was a student. I became a translator and interpreter, worked as a project manager, then moved into supply chain consultancy. Whatever I did, I was always more interested in the people I worked with or worked for than what I was actually there to do. So it came natural to me sort of halfway through my career to pick up my degree in psychology and my coaching qualifications. And I gradually worked my way out of the corporate world and into my own self-employed world, where I'm now working with individuals and organizations to prevent poor mental health and to pick up the pieces after the event.
Thank you. That's fabulous, Peter. And today we're going to be talking about how poor mental health is a business risk. Why is that, Peter?
I say it's a big business risk, poor mental health, because something happens when we go into business. We no longer become human beings, we become employees, or we become managers or directors or CEOs. So there's a depersonalization going on where we become something in a contract. So I pay you to do some work and you bloody well go and do it, or I'm being paid, so I better go and do it. So we sometimes look after our machines and our computers more than we do our people, but we still expect people to perform to a certain standard every day. And that's where I have a problem with the whole thing, because people are not employees, they are people who are employed to do some work. And the most difficult thing to deal with ever is people. They're not the same every day. The machine on the shop floor is the same every day. The forklift truck would be the same every day, give or take. We look after them, they perform every day, but people are different. And we hire the whole person and forget that we hire the whole person. We come into work as a whole person and forget we are a whole person. But if you can't think, if you can't plan, if you can't make decisions, if you can't remember, then that's a business risk, isn't it? No matter what you do, you're not performing to the top of your ability. And this is why I'm saying mental health, or poor mental health rather, is a huge business risk, because you end up not servicing your clients well. You might put up the wrong contract, you might not operate the machine properly. So we have to be careful that we look after the mental health, which is part of our overall health. I believe health comes in four main categories. You've got mental, physical, financial, and social health. And as individuals, we have all of it, and we have to be careful to look after all four types.
Okay, thank you. So let's dive into each one of those areas a bit deeper, so that our audience can get a better understanding of these four key areas.
Sure. As I said, we have mental health, physical health, financial health, and social health. There are people who will add more to those, but let's just stick with the four big ones. And because we're talking about mental health problems today, let's stay with the mental health aspect and see what happens. So if you are feeling low, if you're under stress, under pressure all the time, your cognitive abilities, that's your ability to think and to plan and to make good decisions, remember things, is impaired. That can lead to a lot of pressure on yourself. You might want to compensate for that. So maybe you start hitting the alcohol a little bit to actually fall asleep because you can't sleep. Gradually, your mental health is suffering. And the more your mental health is suffering, the more your mind is suffering, because body and mind work together. You can't separate the two. And also, if you're not feeling great, you may not go out there and socialize as much as you like. So you become more and more a recluse. You're in your own little world. And if you're not performing well, you might actually end up losing your job. Then the financial health suffers, and then the whole negative cycle carries on. But you could also start somewhere else. You could have a car accident, for example. You're out of action for a while. That has a huge impact, not only on your physical body, but also on your mind. You may not be able to earn if you're self-employed. Your statutory pay might stop. So again, you could lose out socially, you could lose out financially. So we have to look at the whole person in the whole context of that person, which is also important for employers, because nobody turns up and get to the car park of their place of work and then become this at work person. We can't just shed our private lives and problems and trials and tribulations in the car park and walk through the door and be that machine type employee. We can't. And similarly, we can't do it when you go home either. We can't just drop the computer bag and forget about everything. No, there's still something there.
That's totally fascinating. So, I mean, how important is it to understand the drivers of the individual?
It is important, because if you go to places like LinkedIn, where there's a lot of very energetic people talking about how you should do this, how you should do that, your career this, your career that. Well, that is not everybody. There are those who do not want a career, they want a job. Because all they want is to feed the family and provide a roof over their heads and go on holiday, and just it's a means to an end. And then there are those who want to climb the corporate ladder, or who want to make it on their own and start their own business. And we should cater for all of those. So you can imagine, if you are an employer with a number of employees, you want them to be energized, you want them to contribute, but you shouldn't expect all of them to want to climb the ladder. And depending on the size of the company, there might not even be a ladder you can climb. I mean, what do you do in an 8-person company that I've worked with a number of times and helping them with few things? There isn't an awful lot you can do other than what you do. So I think it's important about then understanding the context you're in. Actually, what am I doing here? Why am I doing it? If I'm just turning up for work to get the paycheck at the end of the week or the end of the month, well, you're not going to expect much of me in terms of contributing to an awful lot. That's okay. But what if I thought I went to work and did something important, regardless of whether I want to be on a career path or not? So let me give you an example of what could happen and what I'm sure did not happen. Many years ago, I worked as a consultant in a factory that makes pacemakers. And people turned up for work, some just because they had a job there, and others because they had a point in climbing a professional career. But if I'd done a survey, which I couldn't do because that was not why I was there, so we wouldn't go down well at all, suggesting that. If I had asked people, why do you go to work? What's the point of coming here? I would get all sorts of things, except maybe the overall sort of purpose, because everybody who works there actually saves lives. A pacemaker saves lives or prolongs life. And it doesn't matter if you work in the canteen, feeding the people who work the machines, or in the warehouse, or in the admin floor. It doesn't matter whether you are the cleaner, whether you are someone on the production line, in an office, a project manager. It doesn't matter. You all work on saving lives, because at the end of the day, you get pacemakers coming out of the business. So you can give people a purpose that is greater than just turning up Monday to Friday, or whatever your shift pattern is, if you have one. This is why I'm saying it's important to understand what drives people. You can actually create a communal drive, but everybody, depending on where they are in their lives, will have different drivers. Some are young, just starting out, maybe young graduates, maybe they are an apprentice. Others have family, young family, medium age family, school age, maybe children have flown the nest, maybe you're close to retirement. We all have a different reason for going to work. We all have different needs and wants.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that analogy of the community in the pacemaker factory, that they're all contributing to saving lives. I think that's fantastic. So how important is the board in creating a culture of good mental health?
I believe if you want to have good mental health and well-being in an organization, it has to start at the top. And it's not enough to talk about wanting it, think, yeah, that's nice. You have to make it a strategy. So this is something that we aim for. We have certain targets, we have certain KPIs. We have this as an agenda item every time we have a board meeting, and we want to see progress. If that doesn't happen, you can have a very toxic organization. It's not enough to just talk. You have to actually put in the effort to just say, look, this is what we want. This is how we work in this organization. We look at our people as human beings, not as robots, not as machines. We accept that they come and go and have good days, bad days, and sometimes in different days. But the least we can do as a board of directors is to make sure that no one comes to work and get ill from going to work, be that physically or mentally. But then also, if someone turns up and actually feels rotten, I mean, I've worked with people who had survived a serious car accident, and he spent his time wondering, looking into the air, thin air, wondering why he survived and somebody else didn't. And he was constantly behind on what he needed to do, so his department had to pick up the slack. It's a business risk. So because, in translation, there isn't much risk of anyone dying from a translation being delivered late to the customer, but it's a business risk. You cannot be late on your promise of a deadline because somebody else is waiting for that work to be incorporated in further down the pipeline. So if someone had been able to then take him to one side and offer some sort of support so that he could then start to feel better, be a more productive part of the team, that would have been great. But is that just a cost, or is that looking after your, I hate to say this, but your equipment, your machines? Why can we take the computer we work with and update and do something for if we can't do it ourselves? So we have to look at people not as a cost center and a commodity, but as those assets that people keep talking about. People are our greatest asset. Yes, but they do not behave like assets. Assets from an accountancy perspective, they devalue over time, whereas people actually become more and more valuable. So we just have to think about people as actually being people. And if you do that in the boardroom and decide this is how we want this business to be, then there is the focus. Yes, you can delegate who should be looking after it on a daily basis, but you can't divorce yourself from the responsibility. And then when you have set the tone, it is actually up to everybody working in the business, high, low, and medium, doesn't matter, to keep maintaining that healthy culture. Because people at the same level can be quite nasty to each other. Good mental health is not something that management provides and it just trickles downwards. That's not what happens. The top part of the organization must provide the means and the environment and make sure that happens. But after that, it is up to everybody, whoever they are, whatever their rank and status is, to help maintain that good quality culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Okay, so let's sort of move over to talking about the role of the HR department. I mean, are they there to protect people, or really just a process and procedures approach for them?
Oh, this is where I can get into so much hot water.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, dip your toe in.
I'll dip my toe in, and I'll take the hate mail afterwards. But what we shouldn't forget is I think there are different perspectives of what HR is about. Employees, and when we say employees, normally we think about the rank and file, but managers are employees, the directors are employees. So I wish we had a different or a better term for it. But the lowest in the organization usually look at HR as, oh, people, human beings. But at the top, HR is there to make sure that people processes are dealt with correctly, so that they do the hiring and the firing in the right way, so that regular communication is happening, that whatever sequence you have of people talking to the line manager, appraisals, awful term, that they happen at the right time, and that all the processes are being followed, because there might be a review, you might have an ISO accreditation you need to keep up. So they are all, in my opinion, about process, procedure, and payroll. They're not the place where someone can come and cry their eyes out if they're having a bad day. They're not the place where they can go and complain about their manager. And the question is, should they be? Well, if the manager is a problem, you can complain to the manager, but that's usually not going to help. So you can complain to your manager about other things than the manager, but you need to be able to go to HR and feel safe doing that without feeling that your own career or job is now in danger. I worked with a client who came to me with her mental health issues caused by work. And she said to her manager, complained to her manager about a certain person in the organization. And the manager said, quite frankly, don't go to HR. They run a black book on whoever complains about this person. And I don't want to lose you off my team. So if you have that attitude in HR, that can only be allowed by the CEO. So the culture in a business is determined by the lowest standards and behaviors condoned by the CEO. The CEO may not be aware, but then that's another problem. Why is he or she not aware? Why is this being allowed to happen? So HR is there for sure to make sure that processes and procedures happen correctly. And there are some very nasty people in HR. I've come across them. And there are some really lovely people in HR. I've also come across those. But I think they have a difficult job in many respects. And not every company even has an HR manager or department. It's often seen as a service function to the business. And very often it is there to protect the business from the employees. So if you aren't a big enough company, you may not be able to afford an HR department or HR manager. So it's outsourced on a need to use basis. So whether we like the people in HR or not, they have a purpose, and we shouldn't expect to just dump things on HR. You can't dump. You have to delegate and make sure that the responsibility is always with the CEO as far as the people side of things goes. Because without the people in a business, there is no business. You cannot have a business without people in it. You may have lots of computers, but they need to be operated by somebody. So why not look after the people you've got and make them perform better? The more support you give people when they're down or when they're feeling low, the more they give back without even asking for time off or days in lieu or whatever, because they appreciate that they were treated as a human being, not as a commodity.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true, and I love that phrase, deli dump. Delegate.
Oh, I've been deli dumped on so many times in my career.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, please, I can't do this. I have to give it to you. Okay, thank you. Can I do it? Does it fit what I do? Do I know how to do it? No, just get on with it. Yeah. And that approach caused a lot of stress and pressure. But yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I'm sort of curious because one of the things that you did say was, and you're absolutely right, that a lot of HR is outsourced. So for those people that perhaps don't have the courage to go to HR, or there isn't an HR, I'm curious to know what you think should be in place, if anything can be put in place.
Well, a lot is expected of line managers, of team leaders, and of line managers. And line managers happen whenever they have somebody reporting into them. So a line manager may him or herself also have a line manager above. And we expect them to deal with pretty much everything because they are in charge of the team. And there's a huge organization, as you know, called Gallup. They do all sorts of research. They have massive resources to go and do global studies on all sorts of things. And they have identified that actually a manager, a line manager, is in charge of and can affect about 70% of what goes on in their department or in their team. Okay. The ability to do so is also a lot to do with how communication happens from above and down. So do they know what the business is doing? Do they know what's happening next and which direction it's going, so that they can then talk to their team about it? But that's a whole different story.
Yeah, I didn't want to sort of send you off track.
No, but they are in charge of the dynamics of their team, and therefore we expect them to, and I see this a lot, we just expect them to deal with any issue that comes up, including someone's poor mental health. And they may not be equipped to do that. They may have no interest in doing that. They may not want to. They may want to, but have no idea how. And then they do the easy stuff and say, yeah, you'll be fine. Or they look at someone as a risk to be eliminated, so they get pushed out. So there will be the discrimination. There will be all sorts of procedural stuff that doesn't belong. It's simply about arm around the shoulder conversation and work out what other help do you need. But if there isn't anything in the company to offer, well, first thing first is at least we can show the compassion. We can listen. We can stop what we're doing and just listen for the sake of understanding. And compassion doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Empathy doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means listening and then approaching. I usually say attack the ball, not the player. Find out what is the problem. Is it something I can do as a line manager? Is there something you think needs to be done differently? And then you come to an agreement that yes, you may like this or that to happen, but it can't for these or those reasons. But at least you've had the conversation.
Of course.
But you have to be equipped. You have to learn how to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps a lot of these line managers, etc., don't have that specific training. So my next question is, how important is it to truly listen to people at all the levels in business when it comes to mental health issues and creating a culture where it's seen as everyone's responsibility?
I'm sure you've heard about the them and us culture. Where we feel it's us against management and management against us. If you only in the boardroom, if you only listen to yourself and yourselves in there, you only get those very limited perspectives. So if you don't include other people in the conversation, if you don't listen, you only hear your own voice and you only have your own thoughts and your own perspective. So it is, in my opinion, it is extremely important to listen to everybody and give everybody a chance to have a say without fear of reprisals or, if I say this, is that a career limiting conversation or comment? I was almost fired once for asking what the MD did. I never got an answer. But I knew what everybody else did, high, low, medium, but I did not know what the MD was doing all day. Came in the morning, very friendly chap, perfectly decent guy, saying hello to everybody, went into his office, closed his door, never saw him again. So I just wanted to know what does he do? Almost got me fired. So you can do this in many ways depending on how big your company is. If you are 2, 4, 9, whatever in your organization, it's not a big company. You sit down around the table and have a coffee regularly and just talk, thrash it out. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you think we could do differently? And that sort of thing. Just have that conversation. If you're a bigger organization, you need to put a little bit more procedure around it. So you could have a tool, an app, whatever it is, they exist, to create this vehicle for employee engagement.
Okay.
See, engagement is initiated from the top.
Yes.
Engage down, but then we have to engage back up again and crisscross. You can't just ask questions and take the answers and put them in a pile and do nothing with them. So once you've opened yourself up to that, it has to be a strategic move. And I reckon you should survey your teams. If you're about sort of 30, 50 people organization, that really makes sense, because it can be done anonymously, and there will be reports coming out of it, and you can see, well, I think we need to do an improvement project on this particular thing. You then go and engage some of those people who responded from different layers of the organization, so high, low, and middle get to work together, and people can see, okay, they do take us seriously, which means I am going to answer the questions next time the survey comes around. If you survey too often, you get survey fatigue. If you do it too infrequently, it makes no sense at all, because why are they asking me about this once a year? You can't just fix things once a year.
Yeah.
So you have to decide to do something with those surveys, with the engagement. Engagement is a way of life. It's not a one-off thing.
Yeah.
Back in my supply chain consultancy days, I often came across this when we talked about continuous improvement, and someone said, well, yeah, we did that 5 years ago. Well, what do you mean you did continuous improvement? which part,
yeah, why isn't it?
which part of continuous did you guys not really understand? But sometimes we throw ourselves with great enthusiasm into an initiative, and then it becomes actually not very sexy work to keep it going, and people lose interest. Or maybe the people who were enthusiastic have left the organization and not handed over to somebody else. So it has to be a strategy. It has to be someone's responsibility, and someone to manage it on a daily basis, and everybody's responsibility to contribute. And it can be done. Of course it can.
Absolutely.
And it is being done.
Good. In places, not everywhere.
Not everywhere. No, but we have to accept that.
Absolutely.
A start has
happened. Yeah. So how does consistent pressure erode good mental health?
It erodes good mental health in the sense that you feel that you can't fulfill your job. You are always behind. Your outbox is not what gives you stress. It's the inbox. The higher it piles up, the more unread emails you have, the more pressure you're under. So we don't get stress from what we achieve. We get stress from what we do not achieve. And if you feel you're constantly underachieving, the pressure builds up, because tomorrow there will be even more you haven't done or that you need to catch up on over the weekend. Then you don't have a weekend, and then you don't see your family, you don't see your partner in life, and they start to get a little bit hacked off that you're constantly at work. You're working nights, you're working days, you're working weekends. It's a term called leaveism, where you work when you should be off.
Right.
So people bring their laptops, their tablets, their mobile phones, their whatever, to the poolside when they go on holiday. And they might have a cocktail in one hand, but they are glued to the mobile phone on the other hand. And it does cause a lot of friction in families, because why is mommy or daddy never off? I want to play with them. Actually, I want to see my wife or my husband once in a while. So when we are on all the time, if we don't get time to rest, that is when poor mental health sets in. And it can take the form of depression, it can be anxiety, it can be burnout, which is a real combination of all of it. You just can't cope anymore. And when you can't cope, you're no good to anybody. And imagine the higher up you are in the food chain in the company, if you are the business owner and you can't cope and you burn out, then what does the rest of the business do? Is there anybody else to pick up the slack? Or have they already burned out? Or is the environment so toxic they couldn't be asked? So when we look at people in the organization, we should look at them as people, not as employees. If we take that little mind shift and look at them as people. Yes, we will find things we may not like. It may not be as financially attractive in the immediate term, but longer term, you get a lot of loyalty, you get a lot of advocacy of your business. And when people leave, they will say, oh, I work in an absolutely fantastic place. And then you will start to attract more talent unsolicited, because people want to work for you.
Yeah.
People come and people go, depending on where they are in their lives. It is not a crime to resign.
Yeah.
But I've experienced so many times, resign and you become a non-person. Nobody speaks to you. You're ignored. You're not this loyal person anymore. I don't get it. All I wanted was a different type of job that I couldn't get where I was.
Yeah.
So the least you can do is to help people on the way. If they really don't like where they are, just help them. Genuinely help them, not just by sacking them, but just, what can I do? Do you need a bit of coaching? What can I do for you?
Yeah.
Yes, there's a cost to that. I know that. There's a bottom line and all that stuff. But sometimes, and typically with people, you have to invest in the immediate term to get the benefits in the long term.
I so agree. I so agree. I'm very conscious of time, Peter, and I know this is something that we could talk about forever and a day, but we're live streaming this into Facebook, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. I mean, I'm sure the people who are listening already have taken so much value from this. So I'm just going to, I've got to do it on my phone because I can't see on the screen what questions, if any, have come up. I'm sure there must be some questions somewhere. Let's see.
We'll answer them later.
Yeah, lots of people are agreeing with you, Peter. One of them was saying, Laura 2%, what you were describing earlier has happened to her. The right support wasn't available. That was lots of things there. Organizations just want to hide these critical life events so they don't have it, they don't have to do anything about them. HR is very process driven. HR in the civil service was distant. Deli dump, that's a new word for the lexicon. Carole loves that one. I like that one too.
Glad I've added value.
Absolutely, you've added masses of value. Yeah, Patience is saying compassion, listening, very vital skills in dealing with challenges to support the workforce.
But you have to learn those skills. If they don't come natural to you, you have to learn them. You have to want to learn them.
Yeah, and I think that's also something. It's okay, someone going up the career promotion, but if they're going to be a leader or a manager, you're leading people, you're managing people, you need that training to be able to manage those difficult situations. Manager
is more like a job title, isn't it? And leader is the performance of that title.
Yes. Let me see if I can find any. Ability and opportunity to contribute, which was something that you said early on in this conversation, is key, and I so agree with that, and Patience agrees with you too. Lots of people are agreeing with Patience there. Carole, another Carole Elam is saying you often see these pressures build up when a team is downsized, but the processes remain the same. And this impacts on all the members of the team that are left.
We should never underestimate the knock-on effect of someone leaving a team, depending on the reason. If the company is downsizing, then there will be people disappearing, like I was disappeared once, reorganized out. But those who are left are the ones we need to be worried about, because they will be wondering, when is it my turn? When am I next for the chop? And there might not even be a handover of tasks from one person to the next. So there will be a whole heap of stuff that needs to get done and nobody knows how to. And again, that puts more pressure because you're just feeling your way through, you're sort of trial and erroring your way through something that's quite important to a client somewhere else, because there's always a client at the end of what we do, whether it's an internal client or an external client. We never just do things and then that's it. There's always someone who needs what we have done in one way or another.
Exactly. The pressure just mounts.
Mhm.
Laura Toop is saying it's so important to have some joy in our life. Otherwise, we're at risk of burnout. And she was recently reading in Forbes, bore out is a bigger risk. That's a new word for the lexicon. I haven't heard
Bore
that
out.
one either.
Thank you. I remember that one. Well, you know, it happens at school. It happens at work. A lot of the unruly kids at school are actually underwhelmed. They worked it out. They're bored. They're not challenged enough. And you can be totally unchallenged at work. So no matter what you do, as long as you do something, allowed to do something that you're good at every day, then that helps a lot. Burnout is not something primarily to do with the long hours. It's the quality of those hours. If you hate every second of those hours, you will burn out. But there's a lot of people who work long hours, loving what they're doing, and they don't burn out because it's a positive experience. But
Exactly.
still, we do need to take care of ourselves and take a break.
Yeah, yeah. So important, and yet so often, Peter Abrahamsen, time is pressured and results needed to have happened yesterday. I think that's what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, what should HR do to build back trust up with the people? That's a question from Carole Bozkurt.
Wow, that's a big question that I would like to speak with HR about, because I'm sure they hear this, they get this in the neck all the time, I'm sure, and they must have some ideas of what can be done. I just think we need to maybe redesign and rethink what HR is there for. Because HR is not and never was the on-site therapy group. They aren't trained as that. Yes, I know there's something called CIPD, and they learn a lot about people and process and also a bit of psychology mixed in. But they're not trained therapists. That's not what they're there for. They are not the place where you can go and cry mommy. And a lot of people would like to have that place, but it's not HR, not in its current format. It may be in some organizations, but the traditional look and feel of HR is a service provided to the business. So if a manager wants something like a new employee or a training course, they go to HR and they ask them to source that particular thing. And then when a rank and file person has a problem with someone at their level, they will go and talk to the manager. Research I was told, sort of pre-pandemic, I can't see why it would have changed, was that managers spend on average 20% of their time sorting out conflict.
All right.
9 to 5, Monday to Friday, that is one working day gone for a manager dealing with conflict. So if there was a different environment in the business, there would be less conflict. No, conflict happens. There are people, and it's not always a bad thing. If someone has a different opinion, you can investigate that opinion. Maybe there can be some good things coming out of that. But I think we need to include HR in more in the human side, not just in the process side. Because you cannot, and I've been in that situation, you cannot go to your manager and complain about your manager. It just does not work. But you also have to be able to go somewhere else, higher up or sideways into HR, and make that complaint and do that grievance if it's that bad, without fear of reprisals or losing your job or being ostracized by your boss or whatever. So
I mean, I so agree with that. If that's not there, nobody's going to do it.
But this whole conversation we've had just tells me that or emphasizes how I hate the term soft skills, because they are the hardest skills ever. Dealing with people is the most difficult thing you can do. It's easy to take a machine apart and put it back again because it looks the same as it did yesterday. But people are not the same every day. They are different. They you know, if you turn up for work Monday to Thursday and you get burgled Thursday night, you will be different Friday morning if you turn up at all, because you might be picking up pieces. If someone has a car accident on the way into work, how's that going to affect them? You know, we just are not made of plastic and of the same mold, and so we cannot have this one size fits all. And when I then speak to a CEO who complains, well, I thought I was hiring people, not patients. Well, that just shows the attitude, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, people
Yeah.
are not patients, but people are just you and I. We have good days and bad
Just
days.
people,
And
absolutely. And, you know, we've no idea what is going on in other people's lives. And to a certain extent, it's not our business, but it becomes, perhaps it should become our business when it's affecting business.
so there's so much that can be done. And I see too many businesses just go for the what I call shiny box syndrome. They buy a service like an EAP, for example, and then it's ticking the box. If you have a problem, you can ring this number. We've done our bit. We're now a good employer. But there's so much more you can do before that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not enough.
Yeah.
And what is the starting point is the stuff that doesn't cost anything.
Yes.
And that is the compassion, that is the trust, that is the ability and willingness to listen, to understand, not just to respond. And when you start there, when you're open about how the business is doing without spilling all the beans, because there is confidential stuff, not everybody needs to know everything. But if you're more open about the ups and downs, you will have your employees with you in the ups and the downs. But if they feel that they're being shafted or things kept from them, they will run away as quick as they can.
Yeah.
And it may not be the best thing for your business. Again, huge risk.
I agree. Laura Toop is just questioning EAP. That's
employee assistance program or employer assisted program. I can never work out which one it is, but it is something.
It's shifting the responsibility to somebody.
Well, that's harsh, but often true. It is, but it is something that you can put in place where employees can go and seek help for whatever it is, depending on how the scheme is set up and how it's provided for. But again, you know, good mental health is not a benefit. It's not. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be looked at as a benefit. It's a right.
It's a necessity.
It's a necessity. You cannot run a business with worn out and down in the mouth and disheartened employees. You cannot. Well, you can, but it won't be a great business.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you, Peter, really for your time. This has been so fascinating and enlightening, and I'm sure the audience have taken lots of insights and value from it. I think it'd be great if you could just let our audience know the best way for people to get hold of you, especially if they'd like to follow up with you.
Yeah, this is a point where I haven't got a fancy slide I can just hold up with my contact details on. But my name is Peter Abrahamsen. I am on LinkedIn. You can search for me under that name, or you can look for the emotional weightlifter, or you can look up Better Lives. I started my business Better Lives because that was what my clients wanted. They told me, I want a better life. So I call my business that. I am on LinkedIn. You might be able to find me on Facebook. I'm not very active on Facebook because my clients mostly live on LinkedIn, but I do have a profile. And if you can remember what I look like now, you might be able to also look at the face on Facebook. I'm happy to take emails. My email is peter@better-lives.co.uk. My website is better-lives.co.uk, and all the HTTPS's and triple W's and stuff in front. So go find my website, email me, ring me. I'm happy with that. My contact details are on my LinkedIn profile. And yeah, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you, Marie, and thank you so much for including me in this.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, and there's lots of love coming through for you, saying it's been a great. You know, they've really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you so much. So I'm pleased everyone's enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, it's been fascinating. And my name is Marie Fraser. You can find me on LinkedIn too at Marie T. Fraser or at mariefraser.com. So be sure to check in the Inspire Summit. It is running all through the month of August. Today is the first day, so there's lots of fantastic speakers coming up, lots of value to be gleaned and heard. And so I'm going to say goodbye, wishing you all a lovely day, and hope to see you in another chat on another summit. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.